And now it is my great honor to introduce to you one of those clients, all of whom ultimately become my friends, Mark Sokolow. Mark is going to conduct our interview with Mr. Raymond Kelly, and it is extremely appropriate that he is the one who's going to do it. Mark is senior counsel at Arnold & Porter LLP, where he works in corporate and security law, focusing on financial institutions. But what makes Mark the perfect person to do this interview is that he is the survivor of not one, but 2 terror attacks. Mark was on the 38th floor of the South Tower of the World Trade Center on the morning of September 11th. And about 4 months later, he was with his wife and 2 of his daughters in Israel on Jaffa Road, one of the busiest, most civilian-populated shopping areas in Jerusalem, when Wafa Idris, the first female suicide bomber, blew herself up right in front of his family. Mark, his wife, and both of his daughters were severely injured. And they fought back. Mark is the lead plaintiff in the historical case that has been the subject of much discussion in this conference, Sokolow versus the PA and the PLO. Please welcome Mark Sokolow. And now I will introduce to you his interviewee, Mr. Raymond Kelly, who needs no introduction, certainly not in this city. He is the longest-serving commissioner of the New York City Police Department and the first person to hold the post for 2 non-consecutive tenures. He created the first counter-terrorism bureau of any municipal police department in the US and established a new global intelligence program. I will tell all of you that when I came into the conference this morning, a New York local asked me how I was this morning, and I told her that I was doing fine, but based on all the reports that I was hearing on the news from the police, I was very anxious to get back to Jerusalem, where I feel much safer. And she told me not to worry, that while she can't vouch for any of the federal security agencies, that I am in excellent hands with the NYPD. Mr. Kelly established a state-of-the-art real-time crime center that uses data mining to search millions of computer records. He also served as senior managing director of global corporate security at Bear Stearns & Co. He holds a BBA from Manhattan College, a JD from St. John's University School of Law, an LLM from New York University Graduate School of Law, and an MPA from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Mr. Kelly is vice chair of K2 Intelligence. He is a distinguished visiting fellow at CFR, a contributor to ABC, and the author of the best-selling book, Vigilance, My Life Serving America and Protecting Its Empire City. Please welcome Mr. Raymond Kelly.
Commissioner Kelly, it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you here today and be able to ask you a few questions to discuss with the audience. Just deviating from the script a little bit, we're all aware and very concerned of the events that began this past Saturday night with the attack in Chelsea and the ensuing finding of another potential device. We know that this audience is aware that there have been some developments over the last couple of hours, but we're not all aware of it because we've been on the inside and you've been on the outside. So perhaps you could address this very pressing concern and give us an update on your views on that.
Sure. We all know that there was a bomb that was detonated on 23rd Street between 6th and 7th Avenue at 8:30 on a Saturday evening. That bomb was, in fact, in a pressure cooker, and 29 injuries were incurred by people in the area. All of those people have been released from the hospital. 3 hours later, a woman went outside of her door on 27th Street between 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue, saw what she deemed to be a suspicious package, called 911. The police responded. It was determined to be a bomb in a pressure cooker, and the bomb squad removed it intact to the firing range in the Bronx. Now, on that device was a cell phone. It was a flip phone, an old phone. Very quickly, the investigators were able to trace that phone to an individual living in New Jersey. And they went out and sat on that house. And they then saw a group of men leaving that area, and that's the car that was stopped on the Verrazano Bridge last night. So at the same time, they're looking at video, and there is a video of an individual who was near the 23rd Street bombing, and is also in the vicinity of the 27th Street device. He was identified as the individual who subsequently was shot, as you said, and we'll go into that in a moment. He lived at the house that they went to in New Jersey, and I don't know specifically what information those individuals in the car gave the FBI. They were not arrested. They were brought back to FBI headquarters, and they were questioned. We also know, of course, that there were 3 pipe bombs at a Marine Corps 5K race in Seaside Heights, New Jersey. Only one of those detonated. So, in fact, they identified this individual very early on, and oh, by the way, his fingerprints were on the bomb, the one that it didn't explode. So he made it very easy. I think the investigators did a good job in speeding up the process, but the tradecraft here was very bad, and I think he ultimately perhaps wanted to die, in a shootout with the police. So in any event, they put out be on the lookout for a BOLO, it's called in policing. This individual's picture is all over. In Linden, New Jersey, well, let me back up and say 5 bombs or pipe bombs were located in the trash in Elizabeth, New Jersey, near the train station, but actually in front of a delicatessen. A homeless man went through a knapsack, saw the bombs, called the police. The police arrived. It was identified as certainly a potential bomb. And when they used their robot to disarm the bomb, one of them exploded. So now we get to this morning about 10:30. There is actually a bar and grill in Linden, New Jersey. When the owner comes in to open up, he sees someone in the doorway, and laying in the doorway. He calls the police. The Linden police arrive. One police officer. He looks at the individual, and he sees that he certainly looks potentially like the individual in the bowl that was put out. He tries to shake him. He takes out a weapon. I believe it's a semi-automatic handgun. He fires at the officer. He actually strikes the officer in his bullet-resistant vest. A chase then ensues. I believe it's a foot chase. Several police cars arrive. Shots are exchanged. He is shot in the leg, apparently in stable condition, and he's in custody. So now the goal is to determine who helped him. There is a report that on 27th Street that this individual rolls down the street with a black bag and takes the package out. leaves the bag there, that two other individuals come and take the bomb out of the bag. Whether or not they were involved or just people looking for a pressure cooker, we don't know. I don't know at this time. So the question is, who helped them? Are there any other devices anywhere? And to be continued.
Well, thank you. Is this perhaps the sort of a new normal that we might be seeing here in the U.S. or New York in particular, these sort of what I might call a sort of a low-level terror attack? Is this something that we should be prepared for, and how do we prepare for that and prevent it?
Right after 9/11, I came in with the Bloomberg administration. We were thinking complex attack. Let's face it, 9/11 was well conducted, had a lot of moving parts, and it worked. We were expecting more of the same, quite frankly. But what's happened over time is the plots have morphed. They become simpler. We've seen in this country, and obviously we've seen it in France and in Belgium, how effective a rifle can be. AK-47, the most ubiquitous weapon in the world. In this country, AR-15. And of course, we are very much concerned, have to be concerned, about the self-radicalized individual that doesn't have any direction from someplace in the Middle East, but is motivated by so many things that are put out daily on the internet. Yes, I think this is a continuing threat. I think it's an intergenerational threat, quite frankly. It's going to go on for a long time. In America, I think we have done a lot. We could always do more to forestall or detect a organized, multi-person attack. We spent hundreds of billions of dollars. TSA is an example of that. But to defend ourselves against a lone wolf or wolf pack is going to continue to be very, very difficult, in my opinion, and this may very well be the manifestation of that. I think it's important to look at how bad the tradecraft is here, putting a bomb together, which indicates that, yeah, this could just be, sort of a typical now internet-generated radicalization without any real specific knowledge as to how to do it, other than perhaps Inspire magazine.
Most people think that fighting terrorism or this type of an attack is more of a federal function, maybe FBI and others. Can you explain to this audience what is the role of the NYPD and how that's evolved over the last few years, especially post 9/11, and how the state and federal agencies work together?
Yeah, I think you have to go back to the immediate aftermath of 9/11. In 1993, I was the commissioner of police here for the first World Trade Center attack, and we were very lucky. We only had 6 people killed, but 1,000 injured. And it should have been a wake-up call for America. It wasn't. The individuals who did it were sort of written off as the gang that couldn't shoot straight. They went back for their deposit to get the truck. And they were arrested within 6 days, or at least they started to be arrested within 6 days. So it really, I think it was sort of blown off, and not enough attention was given to the issue. Of course, 9/11 was such a horrific event, 9/11, such a terrible event. So as the Bloomberg administration was starting to form, before it actually took office, we believed that we had to do something more. We couldn't rely on the federal government alone. We had to buttress their capabilities, supplement, not supplant. This city was an enduring target with these 2 major attacks. NYPD is also the biggest police department in the country. Uniform and civilians, 54,000 people. So we had the resources to do more, even though our head count was reduced as a result of 9/11. So we wanted to bring in expertise from outside the police department. Cops are great, but they'll do what you tell them. We needed people who were thinking about terrorism, for many years. We're very fortunate. I was able to convince David Cohn, who had spent 35 years in the CIA, the only person to be basically director of operations and the director of analysis. He had just retired. He's working for Hank Greenberg in IAG, and I asked David to come on board to help reform, revamp, or actually create a real intelligence gathering and analytical capability. And David did so. He was in the department for 12 years. He did a magnificent job, and we can talk more about that. I had spent a long time in the Marine Corps and the Marine Corps Reserve. I had a certain template in mind as I wanted a person to head the counterterrorism operations with that sort of persona, because I was concerned about maybe pushback on the part of unions or whatever. Hey, you're bringing in people, over us. So I reached out for a recently retired Marine General, Lieutenant Frank Labuti, put him in charge of Counterterrorism Bureau. He did another magnificent job. And we were able to attract people from the federal government, from CIA, from DIA, DEA, all the letters, FBI, and brought them together and created a Counterterrorism Bureau, but also reformed our intelligence gathering and analytical ability. The intelligence division had really sort of turned into an escort service, escorting VIPs, and we wanted real granular information, and that's what we were able to do. And as a result of these folks being in place, we reached out and brought into those bureaus very talented people from the police department, and it really began it all. We started to assign people overseas because we wanted them to act as tripwires or listing posts. I had been the U.S. Customs Commissioner in Washington, in the Clinton administration, and I had people assigned overseas, and I thought it was helpful. So our first location was in Tel Aviv. We assigned Morty Zadansky, a New York City detective from Midtown North Precinct here. He had, I think he graduated from Hebrew University. He did a terrific job, and this was a very unsettled time in Israel, and we were able to get very specific information as to what was going on. We then, Morty retired. We have Charlie Boeheim, who's there now, a former member of the IDF, who has very, very good relations. So it sort of showed the department's close contacts with Israel. And there are New York City police officers now in Abu Dhabi and Amman, Jordan, obviously still in Tel Aviv, in London, Paris, Madrid, Toronto, Montreal, Singapore, and the Dominican Republic. And they're there to learn about what's going on and also to be able to respond to events that happen throughout the world and keep the ear to the ground about anything that may affect New York.
Well, just on that note, can you maybe just discuss a little bit what the NYPD may have learned from their counterparts in Israel who had been fighting these types of terror attacks for a longer period of time?
Well, it's an ongoing relationship. Obviously, we'd have a lot of visits. I went to Israel on several occasions. I went to Mayor Bloomberg when the rockets were being fired from Gaza. I had gone to the Shin Bet in training camp. It's sort of an ongoing discussions about tactics and strategies. We like to go there. There's so much cutting edge technology that's being developed there. And I now work for K2 and Jules and Jeremy Kroll, and one of the components that we have in the company is a cyber operation in Israel, and made up of former IDF personnel. So I'm still involved in interaction with the Israelis, but our contact with the Israeli police during my tenure was this constant interaction and discussing, yes, tactics, strategies, what I think the threats are going to be or what they are, that sort of thing.
Just moving a little bit back, maybe you could just tell this audience a little bit about your history of the rise through the police department, and how did you become commissioner before we open it to questions.
Well, I came into the department in a program called the Police Cadet Program. I was going to college full-time. I needed a part-time job. I was working in Macy's, and I, as a stock boy, as you used to call it those days. So this cadet program was in the first class of cadets. It was an effort to get matriculating college students into policing. And I also wanted to go into the Marine Corps. I had 3 older brothers in the Marine Corps. So I sort of, at the same time, joined the police department and then went immediately on active duty in the Marine Corps. I went to Vietnam. I came back. I really didn't have a burning desire to stay in the police department. I wanted to go to law school, and I started going to law school and working around the clock and patrol and precincts here in Manhattan. But I sort of it became addicted to the excitement, the adrenaline rush, that sort of thing. And I did graduate from law school and continued to graduate law school, but I really found that I loved policing. So I stayed in it. I was promoted. I was in charge of certain precincts, and as was said in the introduction, I was fortunate. I went to Harvard Kennedy School for a year. It was a great experience for me. Ultimately, I was selected to be the first deputy commissioner, the number 2 person in the department. Lee Brown was the police commissioner. His wife became very ill. I was selected, and he left, and I was selected to replace him by Mayor Denkins. And I then left the department. When Mayor Denkins left, I went to the federal government. I was asked by Secretary Rubin, Treasury Secretary, to go to Treasury and become the Undersecretary of Enforcement. At that time, about 40% of all of U.S. federal law enforcement was in the Treasury Department. So they reported to me and had a lot of experiences there. I went to Haiti for 6 months to monitor the Haitian police. I then left when the Clinton administration left, went to Bear Stearns. 9/11 happened. Michael Bloomberg asked me to come back as police commissioner, and that was it. I enjoyed it tremendously. I'd do it all again.
Well, that's great. You've had a terrific career, continue to have a terrific career, and we thank you for your service to this great city. And now, if there are any questions? Yes. With a mic. There we go.
Thank you so much for being with us, Commissioner. It's really a privilege. The fact that the Muslim Brotherhood has positions in the White House, the fact that the enemy is not named, is that an impediment to your counterterrorism efforts?
That the enemy is not named?
Yes.
Well, yeah, the enemy for us, as far as terrorism is concerned, is pretty amorphous. Difficult to identify. Certainly lone wolves that we're talking about. As I say, I think it's going to be a long time, a multi-generation risk to the city. I can't say, if I can sort of interpret your question, I can't say that we have been impeded by the federal government in doing what we thought was appropriate here. In fact, we've gotten a lot of money in this city through DHS, Department of Homeland Security, billions of dollars, and it's helped us better protect the city. We have a program in place in Lower Manhattan called the Lower Manhattan Security Initiative that consists of lots of cameras and lots of detection equipment, license plate readers. It's run by the police department, but multi-agencies are located there. That's all funded by, almost totally funded by the Department of Homeland Security. And the goal is to make the 1.7 square miles south of Canal Street the safest business district in the world. The event that happened here on Saturday night obviously didn't happen in that area. So you always want more, but I can't complain about what we've gotten from the federal government. We've been sued here a lot, but this is New York, the most litigious place on earth, probably. And that did not deter the Bloomberg administration, although it's had an impact on this current administration. They've changed certain things. They've taken away a unit that I think is very appropriate. For instance, the demographic unit. I started that unit. New York is the most diverse city in the world. There were people here from, just to give you an example, in 2004, the Olympics had 200 countries or entities in it. Every one of those entities were represented here in the school system in New York. So we wanted to know more about who lived in New York. It's very tribal. If you're from Moldova, we'll say, you're living with other people from Moldova in 3 blocks in the Bronx. Well, we didn't really know that. It's not information that you can get from census data. So we created our own unit. It wasn't secretive. It wasn't done by undercovers. It was an effort to get better demographic information as to who lives in New York. And one of the reasons was there were reports coming that people were coming from certain countries to at least live in New York, people that the federal government was concerned about. In any event, they eliminated the unit here. We were blamed for having this unit by a series of Associated Press articles that were just totally wrong, or many of them wrong, or half-truths, that sort of thing. And what we said was, one of the things in the article, it mentioned that no cases were generated by the demographic unit. And it was never the purpose of the demographic unit to do that. And our response to this was, it'd be as if, saying Derek Jeter never scored a touchdown. It's a different sport, a totally different playing field. Any event, that was one thing that this administration did that I think is detrimental in a general way to the security of the city. Getting back to your question, generally speaking, again, the federal government has been supportive and spent a lot of money here in New York. That's probably too long-winded, I'm sorry.
Hi, this is a question for Mr. Sokolov. So something that's bothered me for many years is that after there's a terrorist attack, they list the people that are dead, the number, and the number that are injured, and then the story's closed and you never hear the actual impact. Because of my involvement with Shurat HaDin, I've met many victims and survivors, and I'm wondering if you think that the media should start sharing more stories about the survivors, and if that would change the conversation in the country and the world and make people maybe have a bit more awareness and more of a will to fight this.
I think in many cases, the survivors are not interested in talking much to the media. I mean, obviously there were exceptions. So I think that there are other outlets for the survivors. I think that the focus for them is getting over the attack, the trauma, the death or injuries that were caused. So I don't think, at least from a survivor's perspective, I'm not really looking for the media to tell my story, and I don't think that would have much of an impact. But others might differ.
Commissioner Kelly, in New York, the stop and frisk program has been downgraded. monitoring houses of prayer where there is potential terrorist activities or encouragement has been downgraded. Could you give us your feeling about that?
The question has to do with stop and frisk. The term itself is pejorative. It really has to do with perhaps field investigation, but when people hear that, nobody wants to be frisked. I understand that. This is a legitimate law enforcement function. It's either codified or accepted in the common law in every state in the union. It's been validated by a Supreme Court case, Terry versus Ohio. The litigation in New York started in 1999. So it was around for a long time, almost 14 years until there was a trial on it. Now, just to give you some facts and figures, the highest number of stops that we had was 685,000. It sounds like a very high number. But in fact, when you norm for a population, it was lower than it was in Los Angeles when Commissioner Bratton was the Los Angeles chief, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. It amounted to less than one stop a week per police officer and less than one pat down every 2 weeks. Now, on our 12 years, the Bloomberg administration, there were 9,500 fewer murders than there were in the 12 years before. And most of those lives saved are young men of color, because that's who's getting killed on the streets, not only of this city, of other cities. What we wanted to do was to know when officers were engaging in this practice. So we required them to report. And I can tell you, when I was a police officer, if we stopped someone and talked to them, and there was no issue or problem, we'd never make out the form. We just wouldn't do it. So we wanted to change that. And actually, what happened is the city was punished for good record keeping. The trial goes in sort of starts in the spring of 2013. Judge Shearer Shinlin had this case since 1999. We wanted to put into evidence a Rand Corporation study that I asked to be done in 2006. What it said was, the question is, how do you tell racial profiling? You can't do it by census data, because that means that, half of your stops will be women. You can't do it based on arrest data, because the policies may, in fact, be inherently biased. They recommended that you look at the description of the perpetrators of violent crime in the city and compare it to the makeup of people who were stopped. In New York City, has been for several years, the description of perpetrators of violent crime are about 75% black. The stops have been, for quite a period of time, 53% black. So there was a big delta there, difference between who was stopped and what the descriptions were. The judge would not accept this in evidence, took a convoluted proposal from an expert that was based on census data. In the trial itself, it involved 19 stops. Again, the plaintiff could pick any stops, millions of stops that they could have looked at. Of the 19 stops, she herself found 10 of the 19 to meet constitutional muster. The expert looked at 4 million stops over a decade. He found 6% of them not to meet constitutional requirements. This is the evidence that was produced. Yet, Judge Shearer Shinlin found the city guilty of indirect racial profiling. New York City has police officers born in 106 countries. No other police department anywhere can come close to that. Yet the proposal was that we somehow had a policy of indirect racial profiling, a term that had never been used before. So what happens is the appellate division, Second Circuit, on its own initiative, sua sponte, it's called in the law, removes her from the case after the decision and puts another judge in place. The city moves forward to appeal under Mayor Bloomer. This appeal would have taken place in front of the Second Circuit that had removed her from the case. The next administration came in. Mayor de Blasio was elected. He decided not to continue with the appeal. So, it's not the be-all and end-all of policing by any means, but it's a tool that police officers need in their toolbox. That's what we pay them for. If there's suspicious activity going on, that's what we want them to do, to go and investigate. And quite frankly, it's not happening now, not here in New York, but it's not happening throughout America. The so-called Ferguson effect has kicked in, where cops are not engaging in this. Now, we can talk about New York numbers, but throughout the country, in the 50 largest cities, we've seen a steady rise in murders. It's 17% went up in the 50 largest cities in America in 2015. That trend continues in 2016. So I think it's a valuable tool. I don't think that it's the answer to all of our ills by any means, but the fact that it's being held back and not used in a natural fashion by police officers means ultimately we all lose.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kelly and Mark. Thank you. We appreciate so much your being here with us today. I'll do this one. And now I would like to invite back up on the stage Nitzana Darshan-Leitner to close the conference. And thank you all again so much for coming and being so cooperative with my instructions.
So that's the end of the conference. I would like to thank you all for sticking around and until the end, to all the people that were here in the 2 amazing days. Special thanks for those who put this conference together. It wasn't me. It was Alona Tomer, Margalit Gordon, Rachel Weiser, Tomer Nooni, thank you for all your help, and Aviel Leitner, and Robert Feldmeyer, I'm sure. I hope we learned during these 2 days. I hope that we started a conversation that we want to continue here in New York and in Israel. I urge you to stay involved with Shurat HaDin, with the fight against terrorism. We have programs in Israel, missions to Israel, seminar for lawyers. A lot of you came to get CLE credits. We offer those in Israel as well, with an extraordinary week in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. We have internship program for law students to come and learn and help and be engaged with the cases, and they do have real role in these legal cases, and attend our conferences in Israel. And we may continue this eyes-only counter-terrorism conference and do it for the years to come. Thank you so much. Have a great week.